All right, we have Laura here. She's quickly recovering and ready to go for the next thing that we've got here. This session is Nature's Dividend. You guys are all in the right place? We'll be interesting regardless. Let's go along here with the introductions. Do I have the mic? Is this better with the mic?
Yes.
Yes. This is better?
Yeah.
Everyone hear me back? Okay, fantastic. So, here's a story I recently read that was really interesting. Imagine you're the CFO, or imagine your CFO walks into your office and says, a significant percentage of the company's long-term value depends on a single supplier. We've never done due diligence on them. We've been underpaying them. In fact, we actually haven't been paying them at all. They're now showing signs of failure, and there's no alternative vendor. And if we have to recreate what they provide, it would cost us millions, and in fact, we don't even know how we would recreate it. What would your reaction be? What do you think the board would say? I bet your board wouldn't be very happy. But guess what? That is our relationship with nature. We've accepted a single source supplier that's massively underfunded, visibly degrading with no backups, no contingency, and poor relationship management on our part. Nature is our most critical supplier. It provides water, air, soil, biodiversity, recreation, food, inspiration, systems every business depends on in some way, shape, or form, especially here in South Georgian Bay. My name is Martin Ridlow. I'm one of the founding directors of the Escarpment Corridor Alliance. I'm one of the owners of Benchwood Highlands Resort and a director of the Collingwood-based not-for-profit healthwithnature.org. The concept of nature as a cornerstone of our regional economy took shape with the conservation economy, which Dr. Natalie Knowles, is she here? She's in the audience, wrote and presented last year at the conference. And that was sponsored by the South Georgian Bay Innovation Fund as well. As we debriefed on this report's finding in December over lunch, we realized that the driving reason people chose to live, work, and play here is their desire to live healthier lives, to be active and connected to nature. That insight was reinforced by a 3,500-person community survey in 2023, which showed that trail activities like hiking, snowshoeing, and skiing, as well as swimming, ranked as the highest reasons for people coming and valuing this region. By the way, and I love the stat, you know what the next two were? It was enjoying the craft breweries and distilleries and the agriculinary scene, basically the great food and drink scene here, which, by the way, is not unlike some of the great destinations for nature wellness around the world. So we rank. Out of the report and survey came the vision for South Georgian Bay to become Ontario's nature-based wellness capital, a place where our natural assets don't just define our lifestyle, but drive our economy and community well-being. The Nature Wellness mini-documentary that you just watched, combined with Laura Hergott's insightful presentation, helps paint that picture of what's possible when we align our health, our economy, and our environment. This afternoon, we'll dive deeper into the economic importance of nature on the region and hear from leaders who are already turning this vision into reality. Let's begin with the introductions. So we've already heard from Laura, but just a little bit more. Laura's managed the Healthy by Nature initiative at the BC Parks Foundation, background in this light topic, biochemistry and molecular genetics. Laura was drawn to the initiative by the evidence-based research showing how time in nature improves health. Thank you for sharing some of that information today. She's an avid outdoor enthusiast, climber, and passionate about making the fourth pillar of health as vital as nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Next, Chris, thank you, is farm manager at the New Farm Center and a passionate leader in regenerative agriculture. He's also the owner of PharmaCare Regenerative Health and Fitness, offering physiotherapy and personal training at his farm. Chris is dedicated to restoring ecological balance by mimicking nature's own systems, connecting soil, plants, animals, and people. When he's not moving cattle or turning compost, you'll find him leading tours and talks that inspire others to farm with nature, not against it. Brandon, our invisible speaker over there, unfortunately can't be here because he's caught a bug some kind of flu, so he apologizes, can't be here. I can speak a little bit to the entrepreneurial elements that he was going to be talking to. He gave me permission to do that. By the way, Brandon runs and started the Foundry, which is South Georgian Bay's largest co-working space, and sits on a whole bunch of panels and organizations to promote entrepreneurship in South Georgian Bay. And finally, Jamie is a longtime South Georgian Bay resident who, along with his wife Val, has built a life around the region's natural beauty and year-round outdoor adventures. After a successful career in manufacturing focused on innovation and continuous improvement, Jamie joined the Osler Bluff team right here 17 years ago. Congratulations. Today, he leads the infrastructure and development projects that reflect Osler's commitment to winter first, expanded seasonality, and responsible environmental stewardship, ensuring the mountain community continues to thrive for generations to come. Pretty cool. Let's give a round of applause to the panel. All right, onwards with the first question, and Jamie, you already know this. This one's coming your way. How does the natural setting here in South Georgian Bay impact your business? What percentage of your business is directly or indirectly linked to the natural setting? How many people do you employ or support locally? Basically, what's the scope of your economic impact on the region?
Thank you, Martin. I think it's amazing that we all, everyone sitting in this room can make a connection with nature in this region. I think we're all very fortunate to have that. Many of the businesses here make a connection to nature similar to the way individuals do. And I wanted to start by recognizing that although some of those businesses might have to take a pause and reflect a little bit to fully appreciate the significance of that connection to nature, that in the ski business, in the ski area here, we have a profound connection with nature. And I think we recognize the large importance and responsibility that comes with that for taking care of our special piece of the Niagara Escarpment. We're custodians of a really special piece of the escarpment, and so obviously we want to make it a priority to take care of it. One of the things I wanted to say is that we wanted to demonstrate this tremendous, the importance of this idea of taking care of the environment here at the club, and we've made a commitment to responsible stewardship as a pillar of a more sustainable future for the club. And as Martin mentioned just a minute ago, it goes along with the two other important pillars, which are winter first, we're a ski area, and also the idea that we'll expand seasonality in a manner that's responsible and so that we can enjoy this beautiful area in more seasons than just winter. So those things are really important to us. But I wanted you to know that we didn't just carve that in snow. We actually take it seriously, and we incorporate responsible stewardship into all aspects of our organization, particularly as we plan for important infrastructure projects and capital expansion, and importantly, as we make really important decisions for the future of the club. We want to make sure that that's a very important pillar of that process. I wanted to tell you a little story about the clubhouse. So we're in a building that was originally constructed back in 1979. The architect who worked with the club back then felt very strongly that one of the main things that we wanted to offer here at the Osler Bluff Ski Club was an opportunity for people to park all the cares of the world on one side of the building in the parking lot. And so we created a zone where you could get out of your car and you could symbolically sort of walk away from all of the cares of your work week. And that you would emerge through the central stairway here in the middle of the building, which was designed importantly to be sort of a dark space where you would sort of regroup psychologically, and you would emerge and ascend the stairway, and you would come into a new world of bright sunshine and snow and happiness and skiing, and you would engage with your friends and your family in a way that parked all of those other things and enabled you to be present. And we carried that tradition on in 2019 when we did our enhancement project here, and we took the spirit of that and we took it a step further and incorporated some of our responsible stewardship principles that we wanted to commit to. And we, not only is it a beautiful building, but our architects, designers, and partners helped us find ways to connect the people in the building to the outside. So huge, expansive curtain walls that connect us to nature. Really, really important. We also incorporated that thinking into many other aspects of the building, which included sort of water conservation initiatives, thermal performance for the building, and of course we selected materials from a natural palette, which is really important. I want to talk a little bit about the direct impact economically, because so we have about 2,600 family members, member families, and guests that come and visit the club every weekend in the winter. We employ about 300 plus or minus members of our team here in order to make all this possible. Mostly seasonal. There are a few less people here in the summertime, of course, but we're working on expanding the summer and trying to make that a larger number. But anyway, thank you very much for having us here today. We, of course, welcome lots of questions on this.
Thanks so much. Before we put away the mic, how many people do you employ here? How many cottagers or chalet owners do you have here who employ contractors locally to maintain their places? Like, just give a little bit more scope of impact you have economically.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So directly, we bring about 2,600 people here every weekend, but of course, all of those people and their families and their guests have to stay somewhere, and they have to buy groceries and they have to buy food. And so we have 4 ski cabin communities on the property, and that includes about 200, a little over 200 privately owned ski chalets or ski cabins here on the property. But our members stay locally. A lot of them stay, rent local places, own local cabins. But most of them don't travel back and forth. So all of them really find a place to get situated for the ski season. So I would say, if you imagine that about 2,600 members are coming on a weekend, and we've got room for about 1,000 in the properties, the rest of them are staying in our community. They're bringing their dollars here. They're renting places. They're getting hotel rooms. They're enjoying the local restaurants. We're very fortunate to have some really great local restaurants. And then, of course, they're buying gas, and they're participating in lots of things. Even in this group today, I see lots of our members here, and so I think they become full participants. The other change that we've noticed, Martin, is that when it starts, your experience at a ski club like this starts in many ways as a small commitment, and then it grows and grows as you learn to love it and you become connected to the area and all of the things the area offers. A lot of our members are retiring and moving here full time, and so the small, sort of conservatively designed ski cabins are becoming larger, and so they're employing contractors and people to take care of them and stuff like that.
Does it work? No? There we go. Thank you.
Hello.
There we go. Thank you for that perspective. What's interesting is you've got to remember this is just one ski club, right? Across the overall Escarpment Corridor Alliance catchment area, there are 6 different downhill ski clubs. So, the clubs, I include Blue Mountain in that. So think of the impact the escarpment and the outdoor recreation industry has on this area. That's not including 2 major cross-country ski areas. And then in the summertime, over 5 different golf courses, right? So when you think about outdoor recreation, it is massive here. What I always try to remind people is that has a direct impact on probably one of the larger employers, which is the construction industry and the real estate industry. And that's why I like to keep this wheel up here. This nature wellness concept spans beyond just the outdoor recreation core wellness industries. It actually impacts every single area. Dr. Nat Knowles did an interesting study for POW recently, and it was interesting. Outdoor recreation represents the #2 industry in Canada, just behind oil and gas in terms of annual economic contribution, #2. In terms of employment in Canada, outdoor recreation is the #1 employer here, right? Across Canada, it's probably even bigger as a representative scale here in South Georgian Bay, so it is massive. So just some underlying things there in terms of how important outdoor recreation is to the overall economy here. One of the things that we do have on the Nature Wellness Circle is agriculture. And it's great to have Chris back. Chris was at the summit last year as a speaker. Great to have him back again. Can you tell us a little bit more about your operation over at the New Farm Center and a little bit about that transition as well as the impact that you have as a farm and an education center on the overall economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the New Farm for almost 20 years has been a for-profit organic vegetable farm, and just recently in the last 2 years has transitioned to a not-for-profit. We have a few programs. So number one that people might be familiar with is our Farms for Change program. So we're, as a non-for-profit, we're raising money and we're donating. We're working with 32 different good food organizations around Southern Ontario. And this year we donated about 40,000 pounds of fresh organic greens, 2,000 pounds of carrots, and about 3,600 pounds of organic pasture-raised chickens to these different food programs that are feeding communities across Ontario. We're also working on a regenerative transition program, which will help landowners who are not farmers and couple them with young regenerative farmers who don't have access to land, and create an opportunity for young farmers to begin using these regenerative practices in the community. In terms of who we employ, so we have 10 full-time year-round salary staff and about 7 seasonal staff who are here for the growing season, which is now just finally coming to a close, which is really nice for us because we've been grinding pretty hard this year. I think was, and on the farm, so we're doing, in any given year, we're growing organic salad greens on 10 acres. In addition to that, we've got a 2-acre, what we call our chef garden, and that's a diverse vegetable garden growing just about every herb and vegetable that you can think of. We're also doing rotationally grazed beef cattle, rotationally grazed pork, pasture chicken, egg-laying hens. We have our own composting program on the farm, tree planting initiatives, and we're now getting into silvopasture, which is the planting of specific trees on grazed pastures for the benefit of animal welfare, animal nutrition, and of course, climate benefit. I think I got it all right.
Almost. One of the things that surprised me, I was helping Clearview with their strategic plan. And so I went to the county and asked for some numbers around employment, economic impact, and stuff like that. What amazed me was agriculture was pretty high. But what stood out even higher were the suppliers to the farmers, the welders, the mechanics, the grain providers, and so on. How many different partner suppliers do you work with regionally to help keep the new farm up and running?
So compared to traditional agriculture, one of the themes of regenerative agriculture is to minimize off-farm inputs. So we're actually, from a fertility perspective, we're trying to create as much fertility in a kind of closed loop on our farm as possible. So in some ways a lot less, but then in all these other programs we're doing, we're working with other partners. So I think that the food banks are probably the biggest one that are the obvious example, where there's 32 different organizations we're working with to deliver food to. And so we have a distribution company we work with to bring those. And then because we're now building a lot of, our mission is to develop, demonstrate, and advocate for these regenerative practices. So the farm itself is trying to be, I guess you'd say we're trying to take on the risk of a lot of these practices that might make farmers a little nervous to invest in if they're trying to transition. And so we're building out a lot of different projects. So different contractors are coming onto the farm, like you mentioned. We're doing as much DIY as we can as well, because in the real world, a lot of farmers are not going to necessarily have the funds to put up the money, and they are going to rely on themselves. So we're trying to create realistic analytics and data of exactly how much each one of these project costs, what all the expenses are that are involved, both capital and operating, labor, and then being able to report those back to the community of farmers and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whatever we're doing with full transparency.
That's awesome. It's a huge ecosystem that you're managing.
That's the perfect word for it, yeah. We're actually trying to model all of these practices off observations of resilient and robust natural ecosystems, and then see if we can put that through a farming lens and make them work economically.
Awesome. Laura, this one's over for you. You gave us a really good overview of how the PARX program is working. Can you give us some more specifics in terms of the actual mechanics? Who pays for what? How you engage with communities? Where do people go for their nature therapy sessions, both now as well as where do you see things going? What would be your dream model?
Yeah, so at the moment, I would say we mostly work through a collective impact model. So, for example, to get the word out to healthcare providers, to give a presentation like I did, but for doctors, it's working in collaboration with national and provincial physician associations, for example, or nurse associations. And it's simply in kind. It's our goal to educate healthcare providers, and it's their goal to highlight, innovative practices and to provide professional development to their members. And so it's working with those organizations to capture their audience. In terms of actual nature prescriptions, you can fill them completely for free. If it's just step into your backyard, if it's just go to your local park. But like I said, there are those barriers. If you do want to access somewhere that has an entry fee, or you want to get somewhere that you're unable to get to, we have to be able to provide opportunities for those patients who face those barriers. And currently it's building partnerships basically one by one. Having a conversation with an organization saying, we want people to come to our park for their health. How can we make it easier for patients to find us and to access us, and we build a partnership. There's of course, I couldn't even put a number on it, a million different organizations in Canada that you could fill your prescription with. And I simply cannot build a million partnerships like that in my lifetime. So my dream is to get this scalable. And we actually talk at the foundation about working ourselves out of a job. We want nature prescribing to just be a part of medical curriculum. We just want everyone to understand how important spending time in nature is for health across the board, just the way those things are ingrained in your brain, like 10,000 steps a day, eating the rainbow, 8 hours of sleep a night. We want that next stat to be 2 hours a week, 20 plus minutes at a time in nature. So hopefully I get to that point where everyone just knows that it's a no-brainer. I don't have a job anymore, great. And then those organizations and organizations that will fund them value that nature for health, and so they begin to kind of open their doors more in a sustainable way. We want that investment in parks and investment in nature-based opportunities so that it's more accessible for everyone. We want more urban parks. We don't want to, I was talking to someone else, we don't want to, chop down the trees to build a neighborhood. How can we build a neighborhood using the existing nature that's there, right? It's this buzzword, this nature-based solutions, right? That's what we're working towards. The health insurance angle, of course, is a really interesting one that we're trying to work towards, to have these the way our current system works is to have these nature-based experiences covered by insurance, essentially. It's not the only solution, it's going to be a part of the solution where we're going to make sure that everyone has access to nature for their health. No idea if I answered your question.
You did very well. In keeping with the rest of them, I do have an extra follow-up question, of course. Do you think there will come a time that, just like when we go to the doctor and we got an ache in our back, okay, you gotta go and see a physio, or you gotta go and see, a nutrition therapist, chiro, you can get that prescribed, you have insurance that can cover it in a lot of cases. Do you see a time where we can actually get to that on a broad scale for this fourth pillar of the healthcare system? What's it gonna take? To me, it seems like an obvious thing, but at the same time, we have to remember that a lot of people that don't have access, don't have transportation, but I've even found that the facilities that are required for people to get into nature therapy aren't just going out into the wilderness. Kat, who was on the video, we've done some work together, and she's like, I can't take someone who's just been living in an urban setting, going from their store to their job to their home in their car into the wilderness up on top of the escarpment. It will cause huge anxiety for them. I need to get them into a local park, then I need to get a transitional park, then I got to get them into a further park, and I need certain amenities within those parks that they don't always exist around here. That's my point. Unless we have the funding to put those amenities into place, transportation, stuff like that, I worry that this isn't going to be a sustainable proposition. Over to you on that one.
I think it's actually, again, it's not the only solution, and going to nature therapy is great, but we do need to meet people where they're at. And so we need to be really innovative about how we're kind of incorporating more nature into our everyday life. Brandon was here, we talk about the nature that he's included as co-working space. We were on a video call with him and he had this green wall behind him, right? That little bit of nature, but people who work in that space, they, just becomes a part of their daily life. And I'm going to throw it to another program that I run, and it's all about engaging kids in nature. It's getting nature on school grounds. And so, they grow up with nature. They learn that it feels good to connect with it and that it's important to have in their life. And, all these little steps have the biophilic design that was talked about in the video. Just, almost every point in your life, just incorporating these little bits of nature, and that can make it an easier transition for what Kat was talking about, like getting someone actually to nature therapy, because now you're getting it every other part of your life.
Awesome, thank you. Really appreciate that. By the way, Jim, we should have included the Osler Bluff Lodge in the biophilic design component over there. That's for next time.
Martin, am I allowed to say just a couple more things? Brad and I see my boss, who was very interested in knowing what I was going to say, was here earlier, but he's gone now. So I wanted to offer to Laura that the Osler Bluff Ski Club can help people that are uncomfortable with open wilderness, because we have a transitional opportunity. It's a before work program for people that want to experience nature. It's called snow shoveling. We've always thought of it as the morning stress test, but now that I've realized this program exists, how do we get snow shoveling into the prescription?
But it's good for physical activity too,
You have to sign up for this just as people are leaving, right?
It's good for retired people too.
Awesome. So I want to ask our speakers today, for each of them, just to share, what's the one thing you think we as a collective need to be working on to make sure that we have sustainable economic growth here, while making sure we don't destroy the goose that laid the golden egg, the escarpment, the bay, the forests, the fields, the forests, the waters. What's the one thing that you can think of? And again, I want you to think from an entrepreneurial perspective. This region was identified as one of Canada's entrepreneurial hotbeds a few years ago. Earlier this year, it was identified by StatsCan as Ontario's happiest place to be. I don't think it's, by the way, out of coincidence that we're close to nature. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, what's that one thing you think we need to be focusing on?
Well, I have my bias, but it's to involve the healthcare sector. Because I think the people in this room, and probably a lot of the people that you work with or come and engage with your organizations, they've drunk the Kool-Aid, to say. But what nature prescriptions do is that they engage anyone, someone who has absolutely no interest in engaging in nature, and it tells them actually it's really important that you get out in nature, and that's been shown, the research has been shown, that's enough to completely switch their mindset, and then they go, oh, okay. And then we ease that person into nature, we feed them the Kool-Aid, and now we're building this, this ecosystem of support. So that's my biased opinion. We need to engage with the healthcare sector in creative ways. We need every healthcare provider understanding the importance of nature and writing nature prescriptions and pointing people towards the ski club and pointing people towards the nature-based opportunities in their communities.
That's great. So with a background in fitness and in fitness training, often, and as someone who's a gym rat, you don't really appreciate how intimidating the environment that you're comfortable in might be for someone who's not used to being inside that environment. And so I think the idea of the nature therapists and things that can help people kind of bridge the gap and start making the connection with nature is really important. And so that's going to be, I think, both the infrastructure for them to access it easily and then not to irritate locals. So things like parking at trailheads, more access and well-defined entries into natural spaces for people who are trying to access them. And then those coaches and therapists who can help make the connection. Because that's what I noticed as a trainer, is that the things that seem obvious to me weren't obvious to others, and then being able to help them enter it and make it part of their lives in a fun and entertaining way, then they're going to continue it, share it with their family members, with their friends, and make it a community experience as opposed to just an individual experience.
Well, you stole my idea. That's okay. I can expand on it a little bit. I think what Laura says that we need to point people in the right direction, and we need to have programs that focus on that. And that you mentioned about making sure that there's appropriate access so people can get to the areas where they can enjoy a connection with nature. And I was thinking I wanted to take it one step further, and I think in this local area during the pandemic, we responded to a preponderance of people that arrived here and the friction that created. And I'm calling it friction, but it was a lot of people came and we weren't ready to welcome them or able to welcome them. And as the streets became clogged with parked cars and people flocked to experience nature in our community, people became concerned about where that might go. And so we started closing the doors, and we started doing things that created barriers for those people to come here and enjoy the nature of our area. We removed places where they could park their cars. We created rules in municipalities that limited who could access beaches. Just after the pandemic, my wife and I loaded our kayaks onto the roof and decided we were going to do a paddle in Georgian Bay. And we went all the way, we left here, we went around Wasaga Beach. We always considered ourselves locals. We live in the Prairie River Valley, just above it. But what we learned after the pandemic is we're not locals. Actually, we don't pay taxes in Collingwood or the Blue Mountains or Wasaga Beach. And as we traveled, we went east around Wasaga Bay, and we went through Tiny Township, and in every single community we traveled through, all the way to Midland Penetang, we encountered obstacles that were designed so that we couldn't go there. And we started wondering, where does that go? And so I wanted to share that idea. I think what we need to do is we need to rethink this, because I think what the world needs and what we've certainly been talking about today is that more people need to make connections with nature, and we have a special opportunity for them to do that here in this locality. And I think we need to figure out, how do we accept people and facilitate their connection with nature, and how do we do that in a manner that doesn't create friction and doesn't clog the roads and fill up the parking lots and do all the things that these new rules were designed to prevent. But I think we need to do it with our minds open, and we need to recognize that the people coming here don't always look like us, and they don't always speak our language, and they don't always act the same way that we do. But we still need to welcome them, and we still need to give them that opportunity to experience this wonderful connection with nature. And so that's the idea, I would think, sort of the third step of this.
Awesome. It shows you guys all have entrepreneurial hats. Interestingly, on the Nature Wellness Wheel, top right wheel, it says trails. It also highlights the importance of trailheads. And you think about where the ECA is going in terms of establishing these corridors. Trailheads, working with the municipalities to more formally define good trailheads, parking, accessibility, public transit is an important part of where we're going. So I had a great discussion actually last week with 3 of the municipalities and councillors from there. So we're aware of it. It just takes work, it takes planning, so it's happening. All right, here comes the fun part. You guys get to ask the questions now. So I'm gonna pass this mic around, or you can stand up and just speak freely. No, you guys are keeping it. You guys are answering the questions. Who wants to go first? Please.
Question for Laura. So you got me thinking about talking about the advantages of nature for children and decreasing helping things like ADHD and stuff. So it just got me thinking about the school site that they were building on the side of the beach, where they basically took a mature forest and they clear cut the entire thing. And I'd asked the mayor prior to that happening, I said, is there any possible way you can maintain like a corridor of trees running through this lot? And he said, well, the school board requires this blank slate. So I found the irony of trying to teach future generations and get them in nature. Their idea of nature is to clear cut a forest, put in a big concrete school, put in a big lawn, a couple stick trees, and then try to ship the kids somewhere to be nature. Whereas if the schools were designed, especially in this day and age, with keeping forest sections intact and the benefits of the education for children. So I just wondered if that was something that you could be working on, because obviously there's lots of huge growth communities, new schools being built all the time, and you sort of scratch your head going like, what were they thinking?
I'm so sorry. That's what I hate to hear. I think, so there are good things happening. There's something that's happening right now, actually. It's called the National Framework for Environmental Learning. It's an initiative of the federal government, ECCC. Write it down. I believe it's going to be published soon. BC Parks Foundation is one of the advisors on the framework. It's really a collective work of many nonprofits, government, as well as folks in formal education. And it's really essentially to create a framework for all of the provincial ministries of education to follow, to ensure that every kid grows up and learns in nature about nature every day. And it's really exciting, and it's great that it's happening at the federal level. Of course, education is regulated provincially, and so that's why we need the provincial ministries on board to this framework. And then it's happening, once you go down from there, it's happening at the school district level. So I can happily plug the other program that I manage. It's called Learning by Nature. We launched in BC earlier this year, and we're working at the school district level to restore and enhance nature on school grounds. So essentially we are working directly with superintendents. They're choosing some of the most nature-deprived schools in their district to restore what was there. And what's great about it is we're taking it from a lens of protected areas. So we're getting the kids themselves to be the stewards. They are designing the spaces alongside experts and landscape architects. You wouldn't believe some of the designs. We had zip lines, we had waterfalls. It was great, but we're not doing that. And they are going to be stewarding their nature parks. They're going to be monitoring the growth of the trees. They'll be policing their fellow students, don't step on the wildflowers, so that those spaces will be protected forever, that will create a legacy, and then once those kids graduate, exactly, they'll come into our industry and be supporters of nature. But that kind of work is happening across Canada. And like I said, that national framework is a really great step towards that.
Thank you. Next question.
I'm wondering this amount with our great outdoor activities, but as a business, you've got a golf club, does this have a path to net zero? Does the ski club have a path to net zero? How sustainable is our outdoor activity in this community?
Well, it's a path to net zero that starts at the bottom of the mountain and goes up. It's difficult. But the important thing is that we make the commitment. And we make the commitment by including the priorities around responsible stewardship and a commitment to taking care of our natural environment. Because of the codependence and the importance, as Laura mentioned in her speech earlier today, that if we don't take care of the environment, it's not going to take care of us. So it's also true that we have to make that commitment to the environment. So when we plan things in the future, and it's not just ski areas and golf courses, and it's not just other recreational cross-country ski areas are the same. We all exist in this world where we have to take care of the environment because it's connected immensely to what we do and our success. So we make that commitment, and we hope that as we incorporate those things as an equal partner to the other business objectives we have, that in the future things will turn around. I've seen evidence of it here at the ski club that alpine ski world isn't typically, it's actually kind of odd that in this panel there's an alpine ski club guy here talking about the environment, because it wasn't really the case. But what's happened is that in our world we look at climate modeling and we read research like the research that Dr. Knowles has recently completed, and we pay attention to organizations like POW, and we start to think about these things more often. We start to make commitments to incorporating this type of thinking in the decisions that we make, and things start to evolve. And I'm confident if we encourage all of the organizations involved in these kinds of outdoor recreational pursuits to sort of make the commitment, then it's going to get better.
I feel like a panelist, given that you mentioned the golf courses. I think the path to sustainability is a really important message. So we started our sustainability journey, if you will, last year, inspired by what we heard at the summit, and including things like, the usual things like we want to reduce or eliminate plastics, single-use plastics. But as we've gotten into it, we've actually expanded that and realized that as caretakers of the land, we have a responsibility to the canopy and the trees around. And with the emerald ash borer probably decimating a good 10% of the canopy, we've said we need to learn how to be better custodians of the tree canopy. So we worked with the NBCA to plant over 2,500 trees this spring on an old piece of land. It was just grass, it was very wet. So they used 6 different species of trees. They're like, only 70% are probably going to survive. That's part of their calculations. But as part of that, we're working towards making sure the tree canopy can get a little bit healthier. I'm not going to pretend like we don't use chemicals, but we try and use the least amount of chemicals that we can. So we target just our teas and our greens. The Blue Mountain Watershed Trust does an annual survey of the golf courses in the region to find out who's using how much. And we consistently rank at the bottom. I was just talking to Chris, the representative here, and I'm like, I feel like the true test should be what's the quality of the water that's leaving our property. Like, are we leaving a mark downstream, not just what are we using? Because in the ideal order, it goes to the ground, it gets absorbed and grows, and it shouldn't have a broader impact. And he's like, no way, I've been looking for a golf course that wants to pilot that with us so we can actually measure what's coming off the golf course. And I think a lot of golf courses would be like, oh my God, I'm going to find out some bad news. We look at it from the standpoint of that's great information that we can now use to better manage water and the greens and the teas and stuff like that. So it's definitely a path. I'm not saying we've got all the solutions, but boy, is it ranking high on our priority list. One last thing I should add, it sort of echoes what we were talking about here. You know, we call ourselves a nature wellness retreat. When golfers come up there, we don't have any developments around us. We can't do it because we're on NEC lands, but we don't want to do it. Because part of the experience is coming out there and being surrounded by the trees, by the fields, by the views. We've started a Highlands Art and Tree Trail to help get people onto the trails. We've had over 500 people go on it this year. So, you know, our commitment goes beyond just the environment, and it really spans into the whole wellness aspect too. There's another question over here.
This message is for Chris. Could you please, I'm not exactly clear on what regenerative farming is, and if there's some kind of a definition, and how did you choose to go down that path?
Oh, that's a long story. What regenerative agriculture is, so essentially there's some few core principles of regenerative agriculture that would take it beyond. Organic is basically largely defined by what you're not using on your farm, whereas with regenerative agriculture, we're trying to mimic ecosystem processes. And so we're trying to maximize biological diversity on the farm. So that's as many plant species as possible, as many microorganisms as possible, as many wildlife species that we can attract, native pollinators, bird species, all of these things. Because when we look at robust, resilient ecosystems, we see a tremendous amount of diversity, and we see really high populations of all kinds of different species, plant, insect, etc. We look at keeping living roots in the soil year-round. So when we have plants, whether it's the crops we're growing or cover crops we plant or perennial species, grasses, clovers, all these things, they're releasing exudates from their roots, which is essentially like a sugar-rich syrup that microorganisms in the soil are then feeding on it. So they're keeping populations of soil microbes up. Those microbes are digesting and metabolizing nutrition and turning them back into plant available nutrition for later. So it's the native nutrient cycling that should be occurring in nature rather than applying fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides. We talk about integrating livestock. So in any natural ecosystem, you see a high amount of different wildlife species, and they have all kinds of symbiotic relationships that produce net benefit, positive effects. And because we're looking at this through a farming lens, a farm has to be profitable. So we're trying to look at utilizing, getting the benefits of animal impact, hoof impact, manure, symbiotic relationships between species with livestock. So we're trying to increase what I'm missing.
Regenerative cover crop.
Yeah.
Animal
Yeah, minimizing tillage, thank you very much. I knew there was something on the list. So anytime that we do a tillage event or a big plow, we're disrupting the ecosystem inside the soil. So just like a forest ecosystem, you've got predators, you've got prey, you've got birds, you've got insects, you've got plants. The same thing happens down at a microscopic level in the soil. There's a whole ecosystem of bacteria, of fungi, of protozoa, of nematodes, all these different species. And when we run a plow through, it's like a little hurricane going through a forest. It's essentially the same thing, and it disrupts all those processes that those different microbes do. So it's a set of principles, because on every farm there's going to be different climate, there's going to be different soil type, different farming crops that you're growing or animals you're raising. So rather than looking at specific practices on every farm that the farmer has to follow, we look at these principles. And there are now regenerative organic certifications, which the new farm is actually the first farm in Canada to achieve regenerative organic certification. And my colleague Sandy here wants to add something to me.
I was just going to say that regenerative agriculture is not specifically applicable just to organic. Conventional producers can also be regenerative as well. It's in the name, where you're trying to integrate agricultural practices that are regenerating agricultural land rather than having an open system.
Compatibility and that supports each type.
Exactly, you're trying to harness natural relationships that exist in our environment to create a more closed loop system on your farm to make it more sustainable. And so that can be an organic system and a regenerative and a conventional system as well. Like many different farmers can incorporate it. It's just making all agricultural practices more sustainable and regenerative as well.
And the initial cost of setting that up is the hard part, and hopefully that's better.
Exactly, yeah. The initial costs can be difficult, and transitioning into regenerative agriculture takes time, but over, 10 years, 5 years, 10 years or so on, you start to see those benefits and those savings, but it's an environment, it's an ecosystem, and that doesn't change overnight.
And how did you decide to get into that?
So how I decided, so I had I'll try to
Is
whittle it
this a
down.
private conversation?
Yeah, maybe this is a private conversation we can have after,
It's a nice simple one.
No, it started from my personal health journey, which started in fitness. Fitness led to nutrition. Nutrition led to where our food comes from and how it's grown. And then at the same time, going into what Laura's been talking about today about spending time in nature, I was living in Toronto and I found a really desperate need for more green spaces. And I said, this regenerative agriculture really marries my passion for nutrition, my passion for the outdoors, to spend time in nature and try to help, improve the resiliency of soils and kind of heal the land. And so one thing led to another, and here I am.
Can I just add, there's a couple of terrific movies that you can watch. There's one in particular called The Biggest Little Farm. And that will teach you a lot about regenerative farming. And it takes about 7 years to turn the land into a great regenerative farm. But it shows the symbiotic system of all of the different inputs and how they work together to create a fabulous environment.
It's a fantastic movie. It's a bit of a tearjerker, but it's a really, really good film. We have time for one more question.
Just going to add on to the farm conversation. How did you afford your farm, and how affordable is land for farming up here now?
Now it's unaffordable, completely unaffordable. So I don't own the new farm. I'm the farm manager of the new farm, but I have a 40-acre property in Creemore that I do own, and I bought it just before COVID. I wouldn't be able to afford it now, and I'm having, to be honest with you, frankly, I'm having trouble affording it with the inflation and the rise in interest rates since the pandemic. And I think it's one of the toughest conversations now is that the idea of purchasing farmland in 2025 for the purpose of farming it doesn't appear to be economically viable. The purchase price coupled with the interest rates, then you take how much you can actually earn farming, you won't be able to pay your mortgage. So it's a really tough conversation that we have to have.
Chris, do you want to just briefly mention the program that we talked about that you guys are working on, or is that still confidential?
No, that's not confidential. So one of the programs we're running at the New Farm Center is called the Regenerative Transition Program. I think I just briefly mentioned it, but the idea is to create a connection between landowners who aren't farmers, who have an acreage, and they might be already renting it, or they might not be renting it to a tenant farmer. We want to create a pool of young regenerative farmers who are going to follow standards of practices set out by the New Farm Center, and then be the liaison between the landowner and the young regenerative farmers to create the lease agreements, set the standards of practices, and et cetera. So, we're hoping to create some pilot projects in 2026.
Yeah, that's great. And also maybe partnering with land trusts as well. Maybe that may be part of how they steward their land.
Great, thank you. Great question. Just one quick note. I'm not sure who was in the watershed storytelling session this morning, but Jim's analysis that he's done, spatial analysis of South Georgian Bay, revealed that 60% of the land is agriculturally zoned land. All right, so that underlines the importance of farming, but it also underlines the risk of these essentially green spaces that are at risk of being developed and paved over As you sort of did the math and went, okay, 60% is agricultural and walked that back, only about 30% of the land in South Georgian Bay remains forested land like we've got over behind us, right? So it's important that we keep those green spaces protected because otherwise the rest of the area can swallow those green spaces up. So great initiative. Anything else to add?
Can I make one point before we wrap? For about 10 years, I've been saying there's 3 industries that I see as being on the verge of disruption. With AI, that list is probably way longer now, but I would have said that the education system, agriculture, which is what I'm trying to influence, and the healthcare system are on the verge of massive disruption. And if you look at healthcare, there's obviously some major wins. I personally had, I might not be alive today without our healthcare system, but that said, if you zoom out, we've had hundreds of billions of dollars now spent on cancer research, and cancers continue to rise in the population. Heart disease is still the #1 killer. Type 2 diabetes is on the climb. We just saw a stat recently that there are about 3 times as many deaths from obesity-related disease as there are from malnutrition now. Mental health in our youth has become a major issue, and I think everybody can see that there's just really something wrong. And going back to Laura's talk, we can see that our ancestors evolved in a completely different environment than the one most of our society lives in today. They evolved in outdoor environments with regular movement, with a specific kind of nutrition, in community, problem solving for survival situations. And we see today most of us are in indoor environments under artificial light sources, staying very, very still at close range to another artificial light source from your computer. And I don't think we can divorce the health of the organism in the environment from the environment itself. And if we want healthier people, we need to be occupying healthier environments. And so I just want to thank Martin and the ECA for the work you're doing here and the leadership that you're taking. I think it's incredibly important for the future of all of us.
That basically takes care of my closing remarks. Let's hear it for the panelists. Thank you so much. I get to keep Brandon's. Thank you again for coming. Certainly feel free to hang around and talk to the panelists if you have any other questions right now. We're going to be heading back to the main room for the final closing comments. There's some good stuff that's being worked on for that. Thank you for coming to the summit this year, and we look forward to seeing you back again next year.
Sorry.